So I was on day 2 of a 3-day journey ferrying the sweepstakes airplane, the Cessna 170, from Spokane, Washington back to Frederick, Maryland. I had overnighted in Aberdeen, South Dakota. I think it was South Dakota. Is that North Dakota? ABR? Let me look that up real quick. You can leave this in there. I was right, it's South Dakota. Woke up and it was about 40 degrees. I had packed shorts, so I was really loving life at the moment. Hopped in the airplane. I pulled the prop through a couple times just to get the oil spread out through the engine. Got the plane loaded up. My dad hopped in, I hopped in, fired the plane, but it was running a little bit rough, and I thought, well, maybe the cold had something to do with it. I'll sit here and idle for about 10 minutes and let the engine warm up. So I did, let it sit and idle. The temperature came up, everything was indicating normal. Taxied out to do a run-up. I did my run-up, all the numbers were normal. It still felt a little bit off, but everything was indicating that everything was fine. So I decided I'd make the call, hop out on the active runway, and announce my departure. Added full power, and right away, I noticed something wasn't quite right because the entire glare shield was just shaking and vibrating like crazy. The plane was shaking. We weren't making full power. We were about 300 RPMs down. I was only getting about 1900, thereabouts. It became apparent pretty quickly when I got about halfway down the runway and I still wasn't airborne. So at that moment I decided this was not going to work. I pulled power, hit the brakes, announced that I was aborting my takeoff, and pulled off on a taxiway. Taxied back up to the FBO, parked the plane to see if I could, with my very limited experience, see if there was anything wrong with it. So I went and talked to the mechanic, pulled the cowl off, and he went and started looking around. He saw some oil seeping out of number 4 cylinder, and he determined there was a stuck exhaust valve on cylinder number 4. He unstuck the valve, put some crud cleaner stuff in there, buttoned it back up, put it back together, and did a run up, and right away everything was fine. Got the 2200 RPMs that I was looking for and continued the journey without incident. I don't recall ever practicing an aborted takeoff. So this was, from what I can remember, my first and only aborted takeoff that I've done for real, including in practice. The takeaway that I would give is if something doesn't feel right, stop and check it out. It's better to check it out on the ground than get in the air and wish you hadn't taken off. I think if I had pushed forward with that takeoff, I probably would have ended up in the cornfield straight ahead instead of back at the FBO having a A&P IA work on the airplane. So if something doesn't feel right, check it out and make sure it is right before you continue. And then the other thing I've added to my checklist, it's not in every checklist I do, is a full static run-up or full static RPM check, whatever you want to call that. I've added that to my own checklist now, just in case something like that were to ever happen again. I would know right away before I even got on the runway, am I making full static RPM on the ground?